things back to 2012, where Avengers assembled, hobbits returned, bow ties were cool, and Benedict Cumberbatch lost a fight with a hospital, yet somehow survived. Because I have a confession to make. I was in the Super Sherlock fandom as a teenager. Yeah, I know. For those of you who fortunately aren't aware, Super Sherlock is a term that refers to the supernatural Doctor Who and Sherlock fandoms. And the BBC Sherlock show had such a chokehold on me that when Pantasy told me that they wanted to send me the Sherlock Holmes 221B Baker Street set, I absolutely jumped at the chance. The same way that I jumped at the chance at meeting Benedict Cumberbatch back in like 2014. Straight off the bat, you'll probably be able to tell that this set is built in a very similar style to the Lego modular building series, which is something that I am a really big fan of. But unlike the line from Lego, this Pantasy set is actually based off real locations in London. And whilst this set and the branding is based off just the Sherlock Holmes character in general from the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories, this set definitely references and pays tribute to the BBC show. And that ultimately is why this set is based off both the actual 221B Baker Street Sherlock Holmes Museum in London, as well as the filming location, which was 187 North Gower Street. Back in 2018, whilst I was actually in London, I stopped by both Baker Street and North Gower Street to go and check them out in person, and it's really cool to see that personified in a Lego set. And because it is a mesh similar to the Lego Sanctum Sanctorum, I'm really glad that Pantasy ended up going with this green canopy to kind of reference the museum, but also represent the Speedy's Cafe and Sandwich Bar, because I can't imagine it would have been really easy to get the rights to a random cafe in London. So whilst it's not show accurate, it is a really awesome reference to the character of Sherlock Holmes.
Before we get into the apartment though, we've got Speedy's Cafe, which is not exactly the most prominent location in the show, but I'm really glad that they kept it accurate by including it. There's a variety of chairs and tables, a selection of stickered menus, a bunch of coffee cups, and some pastries and cakes. And it's a sizable enough build too that it's really easy to get in and look around all of the details in this section. Whereas the apartment hallway, I can't really say the same for, but there is a lot of really nice details despite that. It comes with some really nice artwork in the style of a canvas, and there's also a little small hat stand with the classic Sherlock deerstalker hat on top. Heading up onto the second floor though, we have the main and most recognizable area, which is the living room. The details and references in this section of the build are by far my favorite. And in there too, there's a mix of both stickered and brick built details throughout, and despite the missing wallpaper on the living room wall, it still feels very authentically like 221B. The smiley sticker on the feature wall though is by far one of my favorite additions, although it does overlap across multiple bricks, which personally I'm not a fan of when it comes to stickers, as I'd much rather it be on an individual piece. Due to the coloring too, it is a little bit hard to see, but I am glad that it is on the wall since it is something that is so recognizable if you're a fan of the show. In the center of the living room, there's two little brick-built armchairs for both Sherlock and John, and John's comes complete with the printed Union Jack tile too to represent the cushion that sits on his all the time. Throughout the rest of the room, there are some really neat build techniques for the fireplace and furniture, and then as you head into the kitchen / Sherlock's home science lab, there are a few more neat details. Firstly, inside the fridge, you'll find a small bone, which reminds me a lot of the head that Mrs. Hudson found in the fridge in one of the episodes. And then to decorate, there are some really nice science flasks, but other than that, the kitchen is really small and kind of hard to access too as a result, so after building, you'll really not be able to utilize these features, and it also makes it really hard to put the bone back into the fridge if it happens to fall out. Overall though, I think this floor by far has the best build techniques, and just seeing how everything comes together and how much detail there is really satisfying for me, and I think they managed to fit in quite a lot of furniture, which is surprising just given the size of this room. Heading on up to the third and final floor, you will find Sherlock and John's bedrooms. The stairway on the way up to the rooms is decorated with a couple of portraits, and these continue on into the bedrooms themselves. But the first room we're going to look at is John's, which is a little bit smaller than Sherlock's, but still has quite a bit of room to move around. His room contains a small bed in the corner and a really neat detail of him and Mary on their wedding day hung up on the wall. As for Sherlock's room, there is a lot more room, which means there is also a lot more going on, starting off with this little desk and clue board, which has a bunch of little post-it notes as well as photos of Irene Adler and Moriarty hung up. This build reminds me a lot of the crime scene build from the Lego modular police station, and I love both of these designs so much. And with this set in particular, given that Sherlock Holmes is a detective, it feels just right. On top of his his desk as well, you'll find a small typewriter build accompanied by a lamp and a little teacup, which is pretty neat, although Sherlock really doesn't do that much writing, and at first I did get confused thinking that this was John's as a result. However, there is one thing that gave that away, and that is that over to your left, you will find Sherlock's thinking violin as well as some sheet music. At least in the show, Sherlock plays the violin when he is deep in thought. Up on the wall, there is another small fireplace build, which again looks really cute, as well as another armchair and some more printed canvas tiles. To go alongside the modular building, Pantasy included a small horse-drawn carriage build. There's just enough space to fit one minifigure inside, and in order to get them in there, you can pop off the top and reach inside. The build is pretty small but looks really cute, and I find leans way more into the old school Sherlock Holmes stories than the building does. This leaves me with the feeling that it doesn't quite match, but at the same time, I feel like it completes the set by showcasing both old school and modern retellings of the stories.
This set was a joy to build, then again, this type of style of build has always been my favorite. And for me as well, I found the build experience of this Pantasy set to much more closely align with what I get from a Lego experience than the Mega Block sets. I definitely wish some of the rooms like the kitchen and John's bedroom were a little bit easier to access, but overall I really enjoyed this set. It would have been nice though if it came with some sort of Sherlock figure or display plaque, but the detail and references that this set contains make me really happy as a long-term Sherlock fan. And yeah, there are a couple of issues that I personally have with this set, like this gap for this pipe down the side, as well as the stickers crossing over multiple bricks, but overall I did really enjoy this experience and love the way that this set looks and feels. Whilst it is one of those sets that feels like it's a couple years too late, I had such a fun time delving back into my Sherlock obsession from when I was a teenager while rewatching a bunch of the episodes whilst I built this set. It has been an absolute blast. So if you haven't watched Sherlock, firstly, I highly recommend it, and then secondly, you will probably understand and appreciate this build way more than you hopefully already do. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel down below, and until next time, the game is on.